Hello. The total is 4,503 yuan. The salesperson couldn't hide her smile. Thank you for your patronage. See you next time, she said cheerfully. Looking at her youthful and energetic smile, I couldn't help but be moved. Goodbye. It was 2:59. I coaxed Duo to sleep, closed the windows and drew the curtains. My mother-in-law was sorting out the piles of supplies in the living room. Oh my, we bought so much that we won't be able to finish it in a year. This must have cost a fortune, right? I walked to the window and looked downstairs. If I had more time, I could also buy a generator, fuel, solar panels, a rainwater collection and filtration system, and perhaps even a gun. But I only had 6 hours, and could only ensure survival supplies first. Exactly at 3 o'clock, several shrill screams came from downstairs. Some people were running desperately, but before they could take a few steps, they were knocked down by blood-soaked people and savagely bitten. The security guards patrolling the community were so frightened that they wanted to call the police. But the next second, they were engulfed by countless living dead. The apocalypse arrived as scheduled, not a single second late. Those who had been bitten slowly stood up, their heads drooping, and their bodies moving forward like marionettes. When they encountered living people, they would pounce on them ferociously. The screams filled the entire community, and the air was thick with the smell of blood. Oh my God! My mother-in-law let out a scream when she saw this and fainted. Song Yuan's voice was trembling. Sis, did you buy so many things because of this? Yes, the apocalypse has come. I helped my mother-in-law onto the sofa. After she came to, I told them about my rebirth. In my previous life, Duo, my mother-in-law, and Song Yuan were all infected and turned into zombies in the early stage. I managed to survive, because I was driving at that time. My mother-in-law kept crying. The old lady had never seen such a terrifying scene. She was worried about her son in the military, and also about our family. Mom, Lu Zheng and his team are well equipped. He'll be fine. In my previous life, I didn't meet Lu Zheng in the safe zone until a year after the apocalypse. But we couldn't be together often. He was a soldier, and it was his duty to protect people's lives and safety. He fought on the front line every day. Later, when he was on a mission, the safe zone was hit by a zombie tide. Although we fought desperately, the safe zone still fell. I was reborn, and I didn't know what fate awaited others. 10 minutes later, the news began to be broadcast on TV. The police, firefighters, and armed police were quickly mobilized. The government reminded everyone to stay at home and never go out. I made a video call to my parents back in our hometown. Lanlan, you must never go out. Something terrible has happened. My parents were very worried about us. I know, Dad and Mom. You also take good care of yourselves. I felt a lump in my throat. Although I knew that my parents would live well in another safe zone later, I still missed them so much. Don't cry, daughter. Yuan, you're a man. You have to take good care of your sister, Duo, and your aunt. Understand? My father solemnly told Song Yuan. Although Song Yuan was still in a state of shock, he tightly gripped the hammer in his hand. Don't worry, Dad and Mom. I will. You also take care. 7. Sporadic gunshots began to be heard outside. It was the police firing. Yet I knew that such firepower was far from sufficient to control the situation. On this day, the virus erupted globally. No one knew how the virus emerged, or why it spread simultaneously around the world. Even when I died in my previous life, this remained an unsolved mystery. Some said it was divine punishment, a cleansing of humanity by the heavens. Duo was awakened by the noises outside and burst into tears, terrified. I held her in my arms and gently soothed her. Don't be afraid. Mommy is here. The little girl huddled in my embrace and gradually stopped crying. Make sure the child never sees those things outside. My mother-in-law said as she drew the curtains tightly shut. She has to face all this sooner or later. A flower in a greenhouse cannot withstand the natural cold. I won't shield Duo from seeing this cruel world. After Duo calmed down, I checked the doors and windows, and then started sorting out the supplies. Song Yuan came to assist me, while my mother-in-law, who was still shaken, accompanied Duo in the bedroom. Approximately half an hour later, the sound of disorderly footsteps came from outside the door. I immediately picked up the shovel and stood by the door. Song Yuan also grabbed a hammer and nervously followed behind me. Honey, open the door, quickly open the door, came the voice of Sister Zhou's husband from the neighbor's house. I peeked out through the peephole. The man's clothes were torn, and there were several wounds on his arms, some so deep that the white bones were visible. He had been infected and would soon turn into a zombie. Don't open it, I shouted immediately, but it was already too late. With a click, the door was opened, and the man rushed in. Moments later, terrifying and shrill screams from Sister Zhou came from inside, along with sounds similar to those of a wild beast swallowing. I was already accustomed to such scenes, but it was Song Yuan's first time experiencing this. His face turned deathly pale, yet he didn't flee and remained by my side. The little tail who used to follow me when we were kids was now my support. Without hesitation, I opened the door and walked over. Since Sister Zhou hadn't transformed into a zombie yet, I could deal with them now. Otherwise, it would bring endless troubles. Sis, Song Yuan exclaimed in horror and grabbed me. It's okay. I know what I'm doing. In the past, I was doted on by my parents and beloved by my husband. I was weak and couldn't do any heavy work. But after 2 years of struggling in the apocalypse, I, who used to cry at the slightest problem, now had the courage and strength to kill zombies. I walked in and saw the usually amiable couple covered in blood, and their bodies in a state of disarray. The man's gray, white eyes turned towards me. The smell of a living person would make zombies keep attacking. Only by smashing their heads could their actions be stopped. Just as he was about to pounce on me, I neatly smashed his head, then dealt with Sister Zhou, who was in the process of transformation, and then came out and closed the door. Song Yuan looked at me in shock at the door. I walked past him and closed the fire-proof door in the stairwell to prevent zombies from other floors from coming in. We returned home, closed the door, and propped it up with heavy objects. From now on, until the food and water ran out, we wouldn't step out of the door easily. Song Yuan sat on the sofa silent. Apparently, he was frightened by my resolute killing of the zombies just now. After all, in his heart, I had always been a delicate and timid sister. Don't be afraid of me. I will never hurt you, I said to him. Song Yuan hugged me and shook his head. Sister, I'm not afraid of you. I just can't imagine what you've been through in the past. I patted his back. It was just a nightmare. At night, the city was ablaze with fire, and some areas had already started to experience power outages. The police sirens stopped wailing, and the gunshots ceased. Zombies were wandering aimlessly in the streets and alleys. Our community still had electricity. I lifted the curtain and looked out into the community. Half of the houses in the entire community still had their lights on. Heart-rending cries could be heard from time to time. Today was a work day. People were either at work or at school, but many would never return home. On the news, the government kept encouraging everyone to hold on and wait for rescue. I checked my phone messages over and over again. Just like in my previous life, I still couldn't get in touch with Lu Zheng. That night, I filled all the containers in the house with water, charged my phone and power bank. Song Yuan kept watch, while Duo, my mother-in-law, and I went to rest first. But none of us could fall asleep. We were waiting for the next day in the dark. 8. On the second day of the apocalypse, I woke up very early and relieved Song Yuan so that he could go and rest. The water and electricity supply hadn't stopped yet, and the gas was still usable, but we didn't know how long it would last. After I made breakfast and had a few bites, I checked the information online. The short video platforms were filled with scenes of zombies attacking people, and there were even some daring people live streaming. I searched for news about whether the rescue team had entered the city, but just like in my previous life, they hadn't appeared. This wasn't because they were slow to act, but because a large number of combatants were also infected and turned into zombies in the early stage. The government had also tried to use large-scale lethal thermal weapons to clear the zombies, but the result was that even if many could be killed, as long as one zombie remained, a large number of people would be infected in a short time. Finally, the headquarters gave up the rescue and instead concentrated all their efforts on building safe zones to provide shelter for the survivors. At 10 o'clock in the morning, several armed helicopters flew overhead. Their machine guns spouted tongues of fire, shooting the zombies on the ground. After running out of bullets, the helicopters flew away and never came back. They probably also realized that the zombies could never be completely eradicated. Downstairs in the community, there was no longer the liveliness of the previous day. Dozens of zombies were wandering around, and not a single living person could be seen. Taking advantage of the fact that the water supply hadn't stopped yet, I quickly planted the vegetables. Radishes and cabbages grew quickly, and could be harvested as tender shoots in about 20 days. Other vegetables like cucumbers, peppers, and eggplants would take longer. When I bought the house, I was immediately attracted to this top-floor penthouse on the 28th floor with a terrace. People always said that the top floor had problems like water leakage, low water pressure, and it was inconvenient to wait for the elevator to go out. But I loved the sunlight and fresh air. At that time, I planned to create a magnificent garden and wait for Lu Zheng to come back. I never imagined that one day it would be used as a vegetable garden. My mother-in-law and Duo also came to help. I told Duo never to speak loudly, and Duo obediently complied. She looked curiously at the zombies walking back and forth downstairs. Mommy, why don't they go home? In a child's eyes, she didn't yet understand the meaning of life and death. I stroked her head, because they have a very serious infectious disease, so they can't go home. If you see people like them in the future, you must hide immediately and not get infected. Otherwise, you won't be able to go home either. Do you understand? Duo nodded. I understand. In the evening, my parents called via video. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that we were still alive. I'm going to modify the car at home and bring your mom to find you, my father said seriously. Absolutely not, Dad. A safe zone will be built where you are. You just stay put. How do you know? I had to briefly explain the matter of my rebirth, but my father simply didn't believe it and firmly thought that Lu Zheng had to lure Xiaoxi to me. After much persuasion, he finally gave up the idea of coming to find us. 9. On the third day of the apocalypse, the power went out. The Wi-Fi was cut off, and we could only use mobile data. Lu Zheng still hadn't replied to my messages. I continued to leave him messages, explaining the situation on our side. I told him that we would hold out at home for about a year, If there was still no rescue by then, we would set off eastward to look for the safe zone. In a year, the safe zone in the east would be completed with relatively comprehensive guarantees. Setting off at that time could save us a lot of detours. In my previous life, he never saw the messages I left him due to communication failures. Most likely, the same would happen in this life. But my real purpose wasn't entirely to pour out my feelings. I had other intentions for these messages. If there was a future, I hoped they could be useful. 10. Duo wanted to eat poached eggs. My mother-in-law was busy in the kitchen, and Song Yuan was observing the situation outside. I was extremely sleepy after staying up all night, and went back to my room to catch up on sleep. When I woke up, it was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Duo was drawing in the living room, and my mother-in-law was still in the kitchen. The smell of stewed meat wafted out. I immediately rushed over and turned off the fire. Mom never cooks such fragrant food. Others will smell it. My mother-in-law looked at me in surprise. So what if they smell it? People still have to eat. And with the power out, if we don't eat this meat quickly, it will go bad. It's okay for now, but when some people are starving and can't take it anymore, we'll be in danger. I had seen with my own eyes that hungry people could be more ferocious than zombies. They would do anything to snatch food. At that time, morality and law were worthless, and the evil side of human nature was fully exposed. Those bad memories made my body tremble involuntarily. I thought I must have developed post-traumatic stress disorder. My mother-in-law understood and gently stroked my face with her warm hand. My dear, how much suffering have you endured? I gradually calmed down and smiled at my mother-in-law. It's okay. It's all in the past. Although we might have to face all that again in the future, I wasn't afraid anymore. My family was my source of strength. There were many more zombies in the community. It had become a kingdom of zombies. 11. On the 4th day of the apocalypse, the water supply stopped. We stopped taking showers and simply wiped our bodies with clean water. We used the simple portable toilets we bought, collected the excrement and garbage, and disposed of them centrally. The weather started to get hot, and the smell of decay filled the air. Soon a plague would also break out. Many people who survived the first day would gradually die from diseases. We put on masks, sprayed disinfectant at home. From today on, we took vitamins every day and exercised to boost our immunity, and tried not to get sick. On the 5th day of the apocalypse, the mobile phone signal became intermittent. By evening, the signal disappeared completely, and we lost contact with the outside world. On the 6th day of the apocalypse, a large number of rescue workers appeared on the other side of the river. But when they tried to cross the bridge, they were blocked by tens of thousands of zombies. In the end, they had to blow up the bridge to retreat. I stood on the terrace, holding Duo watching all this. In the thick smoke, Duo asked me, "Mommy, is Daddy coming to save us?" I nodded. Although Lu Zheng wasn't among them, they had gone to a more severe area at that time. I just wanted Duo to have hope in her heart. After all, we still had a year to endure. On the 7th day of the apocalypse, the gas ran out. In the morning, I was awakened by the sound of a car driving. I lifted the curtain, and saw a black car running over zombies all the way to the entrance of the supermarket. A man dressed tightly got out of the car, and ran into the supermarket. After a while, he came out with several cans of milk powder. He was extremely fast like a sprinter, but the zombies that came upon hearing the sound still surrounded and engulfed him. When the zombie horde dispersed, only those cans of milk powder, stained with blood, were left on the ground. Adults could endure hunger, but babies couldn't. A child was the apple of a parent's eye. For the sake of their child's survival, parents were willing to take risks even though they knew they might die. Many people like me were watching that man. The scene just now made many people who had wanted to go to the supermarket to get food give up the idea. "I'm glad I turned into a zombie early in my previous life," Song Yuan lamented. I replied, "You won't get your wish this time." Suddenly, the sound of a drone was heard nearby. I immediately pulled Song Yuan back into the house. The drone circled around the community. Someone was observing the situation in the community. After making a circle, it flew away. I looked in the direction where it landed. It was right in our community. I didn't sleep at all that night. I had a feeling that something was about to happen soon. 12. On the 10th day of the apocalypse, a torrential rain poured down. The 4 of us carried out all the basins, buckets, and even pots, bowls, and ladles to collect the rainwater. I made a simple filter using the small stones, soil, and gauze that I had previously used for the garden. The filtered water could be used for washing and cooking. The cabbages and radishes planted on the terrace were already 3 to 4 centimeters tall. With this rain, their growth would accelerate significantly. In the afternoon, the rain stopped, and the stench of decay lessened somewhat. During this period, we had been living with masks on. Today, we could finally take them off to catch our breath. Song Yuan and I were filtering the water. Duo was playing with a little snail, and my mother-in-law was busy preparing dinner. Everything seemed to have returned to the harmonious days 10 days ago. Now that the gas had run out, we could only cook with the fuel we had bought before. To save fuel, the meals were simple, basically just boiled with a little oil. Fortunately, my mother-in-law was an excellent cook, and even with such a simple method, she could make the food delicious. However, the sound of a drone came again. This time, a small loudspeaker was tied to the drone, and a woman's voice came from it. "Does anyone have extra food? I'm willing to exchange it for a Hermes bag." Some others opened their windows. "I'm willing to exchange it for a Mercedes-Benz. I have a house in this community. I'm willing to exchange it for a bag of rice. Just one bag of rice will do." No one replied to them. Now everyone knew that food was the most precious. The drone flew back, and soon the sound of smashing and looting was heard. Some people started prying open doors. A couple was rummaging through things in the houses, but they were only looking in unoccupied houses. With their lead, others began to follow suit. The sound of smashing doors and rummaging through things filled the community, and there was also a great commotion in our building. It seemed there were quite a few people. Currently, due to the access control, the zombies couldn't get in for the time being, but we didn't know how long it could hold. Soon I heard someone trying to open the fireproof door on our floor. They wanted to search for things on this floor. The fireproof door was airtight and sturdy, and I had propped it up firmly with things. It wasn't easy for them to get in. There must still be people in our building. I smelled the smell of stewed meat a few days ago. A man's voice came. Damn it, why is this door so strong? Another man was banging on the door. On the day the virus broke out, I saw a woman buying a lot of things and transporting them in carts. Now that I think about it, she seemed to be from our building, perhaps from this penthouse on the top floor. There seemed to be only 2 women and a child in this family, no men. As expected, I had been seen. I tightly gripped the shovel in my hand, ready to fight to the death if they broke in. Their voices alarmed the zombies downstairs. The zombies rushed towards the access control one after another. The 2 men had to leave first and hide in their houses. After they left, my mother-in-law said, I shouldn't have stewed the meat that day. I comforted her. It's okay. It's all in the past. There are many uncertainties in the apocalypse. Because of the appearance of those 2 people, my mother-in-law and Song Yuan began to strengthen their physical training. In case someone came to rob, they could resist. Especially my mother-in-law, a woman who had been strong-willed all her life. At the age of 60, she was still brandishing a kitchen knife, vowing to protect us well. I, on the other hand, accompanied Duo in drawing and reading stories. I wanted to make up for the 2 years I had lost. After this search, the community was quiet for a while. The survivors I met in my previous life told me that at first, everyone was too afraid of the zombies to do anything, but later, when they were extremely hungry and thirsty, they became desperate. 13. On the 20th day of the apocalypse, many people hung cloths with help written on them outside their windows. After so many days, even if there was still food left, the water must be running out. I took stock of the water in our house. Due to cooking and drinking more water, because of the hot weather, we had consumed quite a bit. Now there were still 24 boxes of mineral water left. There was still 1 bucket of the previously filtered rainwater. If we saved it, it should last for 2 or 3 months. By then, the rainy season would arrive, and the water shortage could be alleviated. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a rescue helicopter airdropped supplies to the buildings with distress signals. The government hadn't given up, and was actively carrying out the rescue. The survivors cheered, but then they fought fiercely to get more water and food. In the next 3 days, that helicopter came every day. Because it flew low, I could see the pilot. Everyone, don't be afraid. As long as my comrades and I are still alive, we will definitely bring you food. The pilot comforted everyone. Judging by the voice, she was a very young girl, seemingly a few years younger than me. Her tone was filled with firm responsibility and belief. But after that day, she and her plane never appeared again. Mommy, why didn't that sister come today? Duo looked up at the sky expectantly. She may have gone to another place, a heaven without zombies. On the 30th day of the apocalypse, the cabbage seedlings we planted could already be stir-fried. The radish seedlings were blanched in boiling water, and then made into a cold dish. There wouldn't be much cooking fume. Finally, we had green vegetables to eat. Many people's food and drinking water had reached their limits. To survive, they risked going to the supermarket to look for supplies. Some lost their lives, while others managed to snatch back supplies. But the food in the supermarket was also limited and couldn't last long. Some people drove out of the community to seek a chance of survival. I watched as some people were immediately surrounded by a tide of zombies, just as they drove out of the basement. There were also others who broke through layers of obstacles, successfully sedowed the zombies behind, and rushed towards the hopeful distance. 14. On the 50th day of the apocalypse, it finally rained, although it was just a drizzle. We quietly used basins and buckets to collect the rainwater. During this period, I made a rainwater collector with mineral water bottles, which could speed up the rainwater collection. Song Yuan's hair had grown quite a bit, and my mother-in-law was cutting his hair with scissors. In the middle of cutting the hair, the fireproof door in the stairwell was banged on again. Those people had come. Open the door. I know there are people on this floor. Hiding, huh? When I get in, I'll definitely kill them. If they're willing to share their food with us, don't kill them, a woman's voice said. Then I heard a loud slap. Shut up, a man shouted. The woman seemed to have been slapped down the stairs, and then there was no more sound from her. Duo was so frightened that she hid in my arms. My mother-in-law and Song Yuan both picked up weapons and stared fixedly at the door. I, on the other hand, gave up the shovel I usually used, and turned to the kitchen to get a boning knife. With a loud bang, the fireproof door was smashed open. Soon, the door in the corridor was also smashed open. The disorderly footsteps rushed into the corridor. I motioned to my mother-in-law and Song Yuan not to make a sound. Judging by the footsteps, there were probably 3 or 4 people. They first smashed on the neighbor's door. When the door was smashed open, a foul smell rushed out. Then their screams came. They were probably frightened by seeing the corpses of the neighbor couple. They thought there were zombies on this floor, and fled downstairs crazily. Such a commotion attracted the attention of the zombies downstairs. The access control was smashed open, and the zombies rushed in one after another. I heard the screams of those people. In less than 10 seconds, only the low growls of the zombies were left. Once the zombies killed those people, they would come to attack us. Now the fireproof door was broken, and it was too late to repair it. I immediately took a few pieces of clothing, cut my palm, and dripped the blood on them. Then I wrapped several heavy objects in them, and threw them downstairs. The zombies that smelled the blood were indeed attracted out. "Mom, if you see the zombies about to come up, keep throwing clothes," I told my mother-in-law. After giving the instructions, I picked up 2 shovels and a lock for an electric bike to check the damage to the fireproof door. Song Yuan was on guard beside me. Thank goodness, although the fireproof door was smashed open, the door frame wasn't damaged, and the door leaf could still be closed. Only the lock was broken. I saw a woman lying on the steps dying emaciated. In my memory, she seemed to be the mother of Duodwa's classmate. "Song Yuan, come and help quickly." We carried her up, then propped the fireproof door with a shovel, and locked the other door with the lock of the electric bike. These measures now definitely couldn't compare to the original door, but they could hold off for a while. After returning home, we moved a cabinet and a table to prop against the door. After waiting for a while, and seeing that no zombies came up, we finally breathed a sigh of relief. 15. At this time, the woman woke up, but I could tell that her time was running out. I fed her some sugar water, and a bit of color returned to her pale face. I fed her a little bit of noodles, but she shook her head. "You keep it and eat it. Don't waste it. I'm done for." Then she looked at me. "I'm sorry. We were going to harm you, but you saved me." I sighed. "You didn't harm me. There's no need to be sorry." She looked at Duo, again. "Duo, do you remember me? I'm Yao's mother." Duo nodded. "Hello, Auntie. What was Yao doing on the last day you left?" Duo thought carefully. Drinking milk. That's good," she smiled, but a tear slid down the corner of her eye. "She left in the early morning. While we were asleep, she jumped off the terrace." I could understand her actions. At the beginning of the apocalypse, when I saw from the phone monitor that Duo had been infected and turned into a zombie, I also planned to follow her. Because of the hot weather, my wound became inflamed, which then caused a low fever. After taking anti-inflammatory medicine, I slept in a daze for 2 days. When I woke up, Song Yuan told me that, according to his observation, there were no other living people in the entire community except us. But we still spoke in a low voice, trying not to make any sound, neither to attract the zombies nor to draw the attention of others. On the 120th day of the apocalypse, we still had 2/3 of our food left, and the vegetables could keep up. The only trouble was still the water shortage. The rainy season that we had originally expected hadn't arrived. Something seemed to be changing quietly. But fortunately, except for my fever due to the infection that time, the 4 of us had been very healthy during the rest of the time, and hadn't had any illness. On the 200th day of the apocalypse, snowflakes drifted in the sky, and the drinking water crisis was temporarily resolved. But in my previous life, it didn't snow until January. This time it was 2 months earlier. We didn't have heating, so we could only wrap ourselves tightly and keep warm by shivering. This day was also Lu Zheng's 32nd birthday. Early in the morning, my mother-in-law was silently looking at Lu Zheng's photo. I sat down beside her. In the photo, Lu Zheng had sword-shaped eyebrows and star-like eyes, looking full of righteousness. He was the person I was most familiar and closest to, the person who was the most distant from me, and also the pillar that supported me to survive when I was most desperate. "Will we really see Zheng next May?" my mother-in-law asked me. I nodded. "We will, if there were no accidents along the way." In my previous life, I didn't reach the safe zone until July, and the safe zone had been basically built in May. There were elite guards inside, and hundreds of thousands of survivors lived there. There were more than 300 such safe zones across the country, which greatly preserved the living strength of humanity. Since the safe zone is being built, why don't we leave now? If we rush there, we can just meet my brother-in-law, Song Yuan asked me. I looked at the heavy snow outside. In such weather, once the car breaks down, we're likely to freeze to death. 16. On the 295th day of the apocalypse, it was the Lunar New Year. In the 3 months from the first snowfall until now, the snow had hardly stopped. In the cold weather, the stench of decay had lessened significantly, and the activities of the zombies had also slowed down. They were like sculptures in the snow. Although there was less than 1/3 of the food left, we still decided to be extravagant today for the new year. We stir-fried a large plate of green pepper and cured meat, opened the vacuum-packed marinated duck, made a soup with flavor, and then opened the last bottle of cola to celebrate. Happy New Year! We quietly clinked our glasses to celebrate the fact that we were still alive. Right after we finished cleaning up the table after the New Year's Eve dinner, the sounds of cars, gunshots, and explosions came from outside. I looked out of the window and saw 7 or 8 modified and reinforced cars parked at the entrance of the supermarket. Some people were setting up guns to block the zombies, while others rushed into the supermarket to search for supplies. They have guns, but they don't look like soldiers, Song Yuan said warily. I could tell at a glance that they weren't. The vehicles, weapons, and equipment were not military standard. They were probably survivors who had formed their own teams to survive. As for the firearms and ammunition, they might have been privately hoarded before the apocalypse, or picked up or self-made after the apocalypse. These people were very dangerous, After searching the supermarket, those people found only a small amount of supplies. They sat in the cars, cursing and complaining. Some of them looked in our direction and whispered to each other. Our community was the closest to the supermarket. Perhaps they thought there were still supplies here. The cars drove over. They searched building by building. Soon they reached our building. My heart was in my throat. The access control is broken. Every household has been smashed open. The rice bags are cleaner than our faces. It seems someone came before us. Let's go to the next building. A group of people left in a mighty procession. We had narrowly escaped. If they had found us, even if they didn't kill us, without food and water, it would have been very difficult for us to survive. The access control problem that I was most worried about at that time had now saved our lives. 17. On the 330th day of the apocalypse, the peach blossoms in the community were in full bloom, forming a brilliant expanse. The rescue team never appeared, and we began to prepare for the journey to the safe zone. The most important things for going to the safe zone were a vehicle and gasoline. Song Yuan and I first went to the underground garage to check the vehicle. The vehicle was in good condition. As for the fuel, I used the hose that I had previously used to water the flowers, to siphon the oil from other cars into large mineral water bottles for storage. Although the quality of the oil had deteriorated after such a long time, it could still be Nencheng used. During this period, a few zombies also appeared in the garage, but Song Yuan and I dealt with them. It was Song Yuan's first time killing zombies, and it took him a long time to recover after vomiting. On the 335th day, it was sunny. We took all the water, food, medicine, and weapons. After taking one last look at this home, we left to face another life and death gamble. I knew that even if we safely reached the safe zone, there would still be a terrifying zombie tide waiting for us. But I would do everything in my power to reverse the outcome of my previous life. If I failed, I would get to see the people I loved. My daughter would get to see her father, and my mother-in-law would get to see her son. It would be the best arrangement of fate if our family could be reunited before we died. The abandoned vehicles on the road blocked our way. But now we didn't have to abide by traffic rules or care about public facilities. I directly drove the car and crashed through. The zombies that heard the noise chased after the car, but I quickly left them behind. The route we took was planned on the map, based on my memory of the escape in my previous life. Although taking the highway to the safe zone in the east was the fastest way, there must be a lot of abandoned vehicles on it, and there were wild fields on both sides of the road, making it extremely difficult to move forward. So I chose to take the national road. But now the most difficult part was getting out of the city. There were the most abandoned cars in the city, and the zombies were also concentrated here. I followed the route that those armed people had taken to leave last time. Since their cars could leave, ours surely could too. As expected, my speculation was correct. Those people had opened up a path. The city was empty and eerily quiet. Human bones and garbage were scattered everywhere. Weeds had grown on the originally wide and clean roads, and wild animals appeared from time to time. There were very few zombies, because there were hardly any living people left in the city. Zombies only chased the smell of living people, and the place with the most living people was the safe zone, which was also the reason for the formation of the zombie tide. The nearby zombies chased and surrounded our vehicle. I stepped on the gas pedal and ran over their bodies. 2 hours later, we finally managed to get out of the city without incident. It was much more open outside the city, and the view was more expansive. The mountains and fields were covered with flowers. I couldn't help but think of a poem. Even with iceberg on the cliff, only the flower branches looked charming. We traveled during the day and rested at night. Song Yuan and I took turns keeping watch. But even so, the distance that should have taken 5 or 6 hours to cross the province took us 4 days, because many sections of the road were blocked by vehicles, forcing us to take many detours. On the 3rd day after we set off, it started to rain. We continued moving forward by determining the direction with the compass on Song Yuan's watch. The more we went east, the more mountains there were. Especially when passing through the western part of Jiangxi, the continuous mountains stretched as far as the eye could see. The lush trees were like covered with a layer of gossamer under the misty rain in the south of the Yangtze River. There were very few zombies in this area, and there were not many abandoned vehicles on the road. We drove quietly on the road, as if passing through a paradise. We stopped at a gas station. The fuel we had brought was almost used up, and there were not many vehicles on the road from which we could get fuel. We could only rely on the gas station. The glass of this gas station was shattered all over the ground, and the supplies on the shelves had been looted. There were also footprints on the ground. It should be that someone had been here recently. Is there any fuel? Song Yuan asked. I shook my head and walked to the oil unloading port to open the manhole cover. This was where the oil storage tank was located. There was a high possibility that there was still oil in the tank. This was an experience I had learned from a teammate who had worked at a gas station in my previous life. Song Yuan and I exerted a great deal of effort to open the oil valve, and then we inserted the hose. I took a hard suck, and the brown liquid came up along the hose. There was indeed still oil. While we were refueling, my mother-in-law got out of the car with Duo. Mom, you two get back in the car quickly, I said hurriedly. Although we hadn't seen many zombies here, we couldn't be careless. My mother-in-law held Duo. Duo felt carsick and vomited. I brought her down to get some air. I walked over and took the child. The little girl's face was extremely pale. There were many winding mountain roads in this area. We adults could still endure it, but it was very difficult for a child. Then go inside the gas station and take a break first. Just as we left the car, we heard a loud crash on the mountain. Several stones rolled down and hit the car. The continuous rain for several days had caused a landslide. If my mother-in-law hadn't brought Duo down, I didn't dare to imagine the consequences. Oh, my dear grandson saved our lives. Thank the mountain god for protection and the bodhisattva for blessing. My mother-in-law knelt on the ground and kowtowed devoutly towards the mountain. I looked at the quiet empty mountain. The snow-capped mountains also overlooked me. Perhaps everything was really predestined. The car was smashed and destroyed. We could only continue on foot. I had anticipated that the car might break down, but I didn't expect it to be in this way. I took stock of the supplies. There was still about a week's worth of food, but walking would consume a lot of physical energy, and perhaps we would eat it up even faster. Song Yuan found a handcart at the gas station. We put Duo and some supplies in it, and then changed into cold-proof windbreakers, and put on raincoats. In my previous life, this rain had fallen intermittently for about half a year. After walking for 3 days, we finally saw a sign indicating that there were still 100 kilometers to Dongjiang. After reaching Dongjiang, we would be very close to the safe zone, but this also meant that there would be more and more zombies. 18. We still had to find a car. Along the way, I had seen many vehicles, but they were all damaged and couldn't be started, so I was going to look for one in the village. Perhaps there was one that could be used there. However, as soon as we entered the village, we saw signs of people's activities. We immediately retreated, but we were still discovered. More than 20 men and women surrounded us. They had guns and knives. Our food, gasoline, raincoats, windbreakers, shovels, and hammers were all snatched away. They didn't kill us, but they also didn't allow us to stay in the village. They left us to fend for ourselves. In such a harsh environment, without anything, we surely wouldn't be able to survive for long. You won't be able to hold out here for long either. How about we make a deal? I said to the leading man. The man looked at me disdainfully. What can you offer in exchange? I took out Lu Zheng's photo. My husband is a soldier. He contacted me and said that they are building a safe zone now with abundant supplies. I can take you to that place, but the condition is that you must ensure our safety. The man was very cautious. Communication has been interrupted for a long time. Why should I believe you? I replied. Although communication has been interrupted, the radio still works. I used the car radio to contact my husband, but my car was smashed by a landslide at the gas station. Otherwise, I could show you the evidence. This was a bluff, but I wasn't completely lying. After the safe zone was built, notifying survivors to take refuge through radio broadcasts was one of the methods, but this step hadn't started yet. Captain, don't believe her. She might have accomplices. We must never make the same mistakes we made before. His companions chattered. Among these people, I heard a familiar man's voice. I looked in the direction of the sound, and was surprised to find that it was the gas station employee from my previous life. Zhang Yu, it's so great to see you here, I said happily. This 22-year-old boy, although a bit hot-tempered, had a kind heart. Zhang Yu was taken aback. Do you know me? I replied. Before the virus outbreak, I often refueled at your place. Don't you remember? I remember you were from the gas station on Qingmian Road, right? You often gave me mineral water. This is my daughter Duo. Do you remember? Duo, quickly say hello to uncle. In fact, in my previous life, I didn't know Zhang Yu at first. All this information was told to me by him, after we became teammates. Uncle, Duo said timidly. Seeing that I could accurately state his information, Zhang Yu's eyes gradually became less vigilant. The people around were also moved when they heard Duo's voice. Many of them were parents too. Now that most of their children were gone, seeing Duo made them feel emotional. I seized the opportunity. Please believe me. I will never harm you. If I don't take you to the safe zone, you can do whatever you want to me then. Captain, why not believe her this time? Anyway, we have a lot of people and we're not afraid. Zhang Yu finally sided with me. The man looked at the photo in my hand again. Is your husband really a soldier? I swear to heaven. I raised my hand. My son is an upright soldier. I also swear to heaven. My mother-in-law raised her hand. After thinking for a while, the man said, then I'll believe you this time. You'd better not deceive me. 19. After resting for one night, we set off early in the morning. The clothes that had been snatched from us were returned, while the food had been shared among everyone, and they all gobbled it up, clearly showing that they had been hungry for a long time. Fortunately, they had vehicles and fuel, so the remaining journey would be much faster. Before setting off, the team leader led some people to kill several zombies and smear their blood on the vehicles. He said that this could mask the smell of the living to some extent. The motorcade set off under my guidance. Our family of 4 was required to sit separately. I sat in the team leader's vehicle with Duo, while my mother-in-law and Song Yuan sat with Zhang Yu. Along the way, the zombies we encountered indeed reacted sluggishly to the motorcade. 3 hours later, we finally arrived in the area of Dongjiang without incident. The safe zone is in Longwan City. It's still 800 or 900 li from here. I spread out the map and showed them the route. Why build the safe zone in Longwan? Why not directly in the provincial capital? Someone was confused. I explained, because a place like Longwan was a strategic preparation construction area in our country a long time ago. There are oil refineries, steel plants, and cement plants. These are all important resources for resuming production and providing military supplies. They listened, half believing and half doubting. Many young people had never heard the term strategic preparation construction. Only the slightly older team leader nodded slightly. There will be more zombies ahead. I suggest checking the vehicles first. Otherwise, if a vehicle breaks down, we'll be in danger, I continued. The team leader took my advice. He arranged for some people to check the vehicles, and others to look for food. After a simple meal, the motorcade continued on its way. As expected, there were more and more zombies on the road. The rain also grew heavier. The zombie blood smeared on the vehicles had been washed away, and the zombies began to besiege us. We tried to avoid them if possible. If we couldn't, we had to confront them head-on. In such a situation, more and more people were injured and infected. When we were still 100 li away from Longwan City, only 19 of the original 27 people were left. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't have lost so many people. Someone couldn't bear it and attacked me. Song Yuan stood in front of me angrily. If we hadn't told you about the safe zone, your end in that small village would also have been death. You want to survive without paying any price. There's no such good thing in the world. Just as they were about to fight, the team leader stopped those people. That's enough. What's done is done. There's no use talking more. If we don't see the safe zone when we reach Longwan, we'll settle this score then. The motorcade continued moving forward. The sky was gloomy with low visibility, but the surrounding environment was becoming more and more familiar to me. We're almost at the safe zone. It's at most half an hour away. My voice was trembling. Mommy, can we see Daddy soon? Duo asked in a low voice. I nodded. Yes, we can see him soon. As soon as I finished speaking, the team leader slammed on the brakes. I looked up and saw hundreds of zombies densely packed in front of us. They stood in the rain, their gray, white eyes looking at us coldly. Retreat, retreat immediately, the team leader roared. But it was already too late. Zombies were everywhere surrounding us. I was unwilling to die here. I glanced around and saw a 3-story building nearby. Get out of the cars and go upstairs to fight a defensive battle. We have guns. The safe zone will definitely come to rescue us when they hear the gunshots. I opened the car door, picked up Duo and jumped out first. The others also got out of the cars one after another, shooting while retreating. The zombies surged forward like a tide. We fled into the building, propped the door with shovels, and then moved all the furniture to firmly block the door. Everyone gathered on the 3rd floor and fired at the zombies below through the windows. But only when the zombies were shot in the head would they die. Such blind shooting didn't have much effect. Song Yuan and Zhang Yu carried the remaining gasoline and poured it down, then lit a fire. The zombies were set on fire, but due to the rain, the flames gradually went out, leaving a pungent smell of charred flesh. The door on the 1st floor was smashed open by the zombies, and then the 2nd floor door. We held our ground on the 3rd floor. The sound of the zombies was right next to our ears. We stacked ourselves against the last door. I prayed to heaven, praying that the defenders in the safe zone could hear our gunshots, praying that Lu Zheng would come to us quickly. Time seemed to stop. Everything was slowly stretching. Everyone seemed to have entered a long dark tunnel, not knowing when they would see the light. 20. Gradually, I seemed to hear the sound of a helicopter, or perhaps it was thunder. I wasn't sure. Did you hear the sound of an airplane? I asked. Everyone quieted down and pricked up their ears. The rumbling sound came closer and closer. Before we could confirm, we saw tongues of fire angrily flashing outside the window. The zombies downstairs were torn to pieces. They're armed helicopters, 3 in total. There really is a safe zone here. We're saved. Someone burst into tears, crying with joy at being reborn. The helicopters circled around again and again. The bullets passed through the zombie horde, and large numbers of zombies fell. Combat vehicles stopped downstairs. Intense gunshots rang out. Fully armed combatants approached step by step. In the face of this absolute firepower coverage, the remaining zombies were quickly cleared. The door was opened, and the combatants entered with guns at the ready. Once someone among us was infected, they would be killed without mercy. Their faces were all covered with black masks, only revealing sharp eyes like those of eagles. But even with such tight covering, I still recognized those familiar eyes at a glance. Lu Zheng. I called out his name, and then my eyes went black, and I fell down. 21. I felt that my body became very light, like a cloud floating up to the sky. Golden light shone on me from the sky, making me feel warm and sleepy. When I floated halfway, I suddenly heard Duo crying below. I immediately looked down, and found that there was also a me on the ground. The me on the ground had my eyes closed, and was being held in Lu Zheng's arms, looking pale. Duo was crying beside me, and my mother-in-law was so anxious that she didn't know what to do. Song Yuan was about to pinch my philtrum. I finally realized that I was having an out-of-body experience. Was I going to die? No, I couldn't die. I had endured the anxious spring, summer, autumn and winter, traveled thousands of miles across mountains and rivers. On the 355th day of the apocalypse, I brought my family to this place 3 months earlier than in my previous life, to reunite with Lu Zheng. I definitely couldn't die like this. Moreover, I hadn't told Lu Zheng about the zombie tide yet, so I struggled to pounce into Lu Zheng's arms. I wanted to return to my body. When I woke up again, I was already in a white hospital ward. Lu Zheng was sitting beside me, adjusting the infusion set. When he saw that I was awake, he reached out and touched my forehead. You're awake. Do you still feel uncomfortable anywhere? Where are Mom, Duo and the others? What's wrong with me? They just left to rest. You're severely anemic. Sleep a little longer. The doctor said you probably haven't slept well for a long time. The doctor was quite right. In both my previous life and this reborn life, I hadn't had a single peaceful night's sleep. The slightest noise, even just a gust of wind, could wake me up. You go and get busy. I knew he had great responsibilities and didn't want to waste his time. He held my hand. You were having a nightmare when you were unconscious just now. Let me stay with you for a while. I stared blankly at him, recalling that in my previous life, we had lived here for almost a year. But because we had lost our family and children, we usually remained silent and rarely had such close moments. Even when we later wanted to have another child, we gave up halfway because we were too sad. At that time, not only the two of us, but most other couples were also like this, immersed in an unresolvable sadness. I felt the warmth of his palm. Lu Zheng, I did it. What did you do? He asked. I replied, when we got married, I told you. You dedicate yourself to the country, and I'll dedicate myself to you. I'll protect our small family. Now I've done it. He nodded and tucked the quilt around me. Thank you. I fell asleep peacefully. Vaguely, I seemed to hear him say, Song Lan, thank you for saving me too. 22. I slept soundly for 12 hours without having any more nightmares. After waking up, Lu Zheng and I went to the rest area to meet my mother-in-law and the others. The rest area was inhabited by survivors, and there were approximately 10,000 people there now. Song Yuan was in the male rest area. He and the team leader had already signed up as volunteers on the spot, and were currently in charge of the logistics work in the safe zone. After charging my phone and turning it on again, looking at the messages I had sent to Lu Zheng at that time, from now on, I would strive to reverse the outcome of my previous life. Lu Zheng, I was reborn. I told him directly, handing my phone to him. These are the messages I sent you before the apocalypse. I knew all this would happen, so I could prepare for survival. I also knew that a safe zone would be built in Longwan, so I came here. On March 17th next year, this safe zone will be hit by a zombie tide, and the entire safe zone will fall. Lu Zheng took the phone with a serious expression and then, out of professional habit, looked at me. Songlan, is the virus related to you? What organization are you from? I had anticipated his reaction. If he had believed me easily, that would have been abnormal. Lu Zheng, after a battle against zombies you were injured. You thought you were infected with the virus, and locked yourself up. It turned out to be just an ordinary injury. This was something he had told me in my previous life. He said he hadn't told anyone else except me. Lu Zheng's eyes showed surprise. Apparently, he hadn't told anyone else in this life either. You said you saved a child who was like Duo, and helped her find her parents. You secretly shed tears when you saw their family reunited. I told him one thing after another from my previous life. My mother-in-law also swore beside me that I was a good person and definitely not a bad element. Lu Zheng was silent for a while. Our current outer perimeter defense works can withstand missile attacks, and we have satellite monitoring of the movement direction of large-scale zombie hordes. Logically, the situation you described shouldn't happen. I shook my head. It's not enough, far from enough. There are just too many of them. And a week before the zombie tide hits, our monitoring satellite will be crashed by the foreign Starlink. Songlan, you're too tired. Don't think too much. You're safe now. Just like my father, Lu Zheng didn't believe in the matter of rebirth. He thought that the year-long mental stress had caused me to have hallucinations. I looked at him earnestly. This isn't my imagination. It's all real. You cannot believe me now. But on the day the Starlink crashes the satellite, you must make the safe zone prepare well, and definitely not leave. Then I didn't say anything more, because my first step plan was to plant a seed in Lu Zheng's heart first. Okay, I promise you. Lu Zheng agreed, but I knew he was just trying to make me feel at ease. On the 365th day of the apocalypse, I became a registrar in the safe zone. Now more and more survivors were coming to the safe zone. I saw many people I knew in my previous life, although they didn't know me. When I saw them standing alive in front of me, I felt that this life was worth it. Song Yuan came to see me occasionally. His major in university was in industry. Now he had been transferred from logistics to the weapons production department, which was somewhat related to his major. I finally got in touch with my parents. They cried and laughed when they knew we were still alive. My mother told me that half a month after the apocalypse, they had modified the car and wanted to come to find us. But the village party secretary in our hometown, along with a group of young people, had firmly stopped them, so they didn't succeed. If the zombie tide here couldn't be stopped, the safe zone where my parents were might also be in trouble. I repeatedly told them to be on high alert. 23. Although the safe zone now allocated everything, I still retain the habit of stockpiling supplies. I even dug a basement at home. I had to make two-hand preparations. When Lu Zheng came back and saw it, he didn't say anything. A few days later, I heard that the safe zone was going to start building an underground shelter, and it was Lu Zheng who had proposed the suggestion. He was always like this, not talking much, just acting. I knew that the seed I had planted had successfully taken root in his heart. Soon, I also saw Zhang Yu and the team leader. Zhang Yu had gone to the oil refinery, and the team leader and others had joined the city defense battalion. It was said that they had killed quite a few zombies, and were highly regarded. Sister, I'm really sorry about that time. I hope you can forgive me. The team leader said apologetically. It doesn't matter. It's all in the past. I didn't hold it against them, because I wanted to use them to carry out my second step plan. I suggested to them that they clean and widen the moat and store water. If a large number of zombies came, this could slow down the speed of the zombies attacking the city to some extent. Perhaps because of his guilt towards me, or because he thought this idea was useful. The team leader quickly led the city defense battalion to take action. Because of my excellent performance at work, I was recommended as the main person in charge of the logistics department in the safe zone, leading women and children to carry out production and daily life. I took advantage of this convenience to often organize everyone to remove weeds and vines from the protective wall, to strengthen the city wall, and leave no safety hazards. When I stood on the city wall and looked out at the world, I saw a desolate and silent scene. May everything grow on this day next year. 24. On the 410th day of the apocalypse, it was my 30th birthday. There was no cake in the safe zone. My mother-in-law cooked longevity noodles with eggs for me. Song Yuan got 2 cans of beef. Duo drew a picture. And Lu Zheng forgot. He had been busy rescuing survivors, and we could only see each other once every 3 or 4 days. Sorry, I'll make it up to you after this busy period, Lu Zheng apologized. I didn't really care. Being with my family was the best gift I could ask for. On the 448th day of the apocalypse, the safe zone captured several zombies and sent them to the laboratory. I knew that this experiment would still fail. Since the beginning of the apocalypse, the world's elites in the field of virology had been developing a vaccine. But the progress had not been smooth. The safe zone began to encourage population growth, because where there were people, there was hope. In my previous life, due to my poor mental state, Lu Zheng and I didn't succeed. In this life I still refused. Before the zombie tide crisis was lifted, I wouldn't conceive another life. Song Yuan came to see me during his break, and told me that because of the success of our safe zone, countries around the world were following suit. They were also building safe zones centered around heavy industrial areas to take in survivors, and the results were remarkable. The world was gradually stabilizing. Countries began to share resources and cooperate. This extreme virus infection had stopped the wars and disputes, and people began to re-examine the world. On the 540th day of the apocalypse, the life in our safe zone had become relatively mature. The schools in the safe zone were rebuilt, and the children began to study again. Duo entered kindergarten, and my mother-in-law found a job as a nursery nurse in the kindergarten. Everything was on the right track. 25. On the 647th day of the apocalypse, New Year's Day arrived. There were still 65 days until the zombie tide on March 17th. On this day, the safe zone set off fireworks to celebrate the new year. The sadness of the past year, and more was temporarily forgotten in these fireworks. Many people closed their eyes and made silent wishes. I did the same, praying for everything to be peaceful. But from this day on, I started to have insomnia again. Although Lu Zheng came back every night now, I still had difficulty falling asleep. As soon as I closed my eyes, all I could see were scenes of zombies biting me. Sometimes I woke up from my dreams in a cold sweat. Lu Zheng poured me a cup of hot water. Go to the hospital tomorrow and get some calming medicine. This was a psychological problem. Medicine couldn't cure it. If the safe zone was safe and sound after March 17th, my problem would be cured immediately. On the 698th day of the apocalypse, there were 7 days left until the zombie tide. In the middle of the night, Lu Zheng received a phone call. The person on the other end was speaking urgently. He immediately sat up in bed. After hanging up the phone, he looked at me. Our satellite has been crashed. I replied calmly, but my body still couldn't stop shaking. He lit a cigarette but didn't smoke it. When did the zombie tide arrive on March 17th? An hour after you set out, probably around 10 o'clock in the morning. From which direction? From all directions. He extinguished the cigarette. Go to sleep. I'm going to the command post. He left and didn't come back for 5 days. I didn't know how he explained it to the command post. Early the next morning, 4 or 5 planes left the safe zone to conduct reconnaissance. At noon, dozens of bombers took off with a large number of incendiary bombs and explosives, and then kept making round trips. With such large-scale clearance, the zombie tide might not form, and the crisis might be resolved like this. On the 5th day, the safe zone notified all the elderly, the weak, women and children to enter the underground shelter, and the other young and middle-aged people were on standby. Lu Zheng came back that day. He told me that although the 3-day bombing had cleared a lot, the zombies were gathering too fast, and a part of them would still reach the Longwan safe zone. How many approximately? I asked him. He looked relaxed. Not many. Don't worry. In the evening, after having dinner together, Duo nestled in Lu Zheng's arms, and asked him to tell a story. Lu Zheng held her, and told stories for a full hour, until the little girl fell into a sweet dream in his arms. Then he gently carried the child to the bed, and covered her with the quilt. My mother-in-law and I were packing things for going to the shelter. Song Yuan brought a bunch of food, and then hurried back to his unit. I saw him off. When we reached the alley, he turned around and looked at me with a smile. Sis, there are your favorite coconut candies in the red bag. I saved up points for a long time to buy them for you. Don't forget to eat them. Got it. Be careful on the way. I watched him walk through the long alley and disappear into the night. At night, the bright moon was like water. Lu Zheng was going to the city defense. Before leaving, he suddenly gently hugged me. Songlan, I'm very lucky to have met you in my life. Thank you. He was an introverted and calm person, and rarely showed such tenderness. I suddenly realized that both he and Song Yuan were saying goodbye to me. Things might be more serious than I thought. In the zombie tide of my previous life, if Lu Zheng and his team had been in the safe zone at that time, with their strength, they could have blocked the zombie tide. And now, judging from the scale of the 3-day bombing, Those zombies in my previous life should have been almost cleared. But now Lu Zheng was so solemn. Could it be that the scale of the zombie tide in this life was much larger than in my previous life? I remembered the delay in the rainy days, and the early arrival of the snowstorm days last year. Had many things been changing since then? I felt that I might have made a mistake. I should have taken Lu Zheng away as soon as I came to the safe zone. And then our family could have gone to my parents' place or back to our home. We could plant vegetables on the terrace, and we could even plant rice and wheat, raise chickens and ducks, and live quietly. I was too greedy, wanting to save everyone. You must come back. I've used the strength of 2 lifetimes to come to you. You can't let me down like this. I hugged him tightly in return, and tears streamed down my face. He moved his lips but didn't say anything. He just looked at me deeply and finally, he kissed me on the lips and turned to leave. I knew that he never promised what he couldn't deliver. 26, March 17th. The 705th day of the apocalypse. My mother-in-law, Duo, and tens of thousands of women and children took refuge in the underground shelter. Worry was evident in everyone's eyes. I, along with the volunteers, was soothing everyone's emotions. I told them that the supplies in the underground shelter were abundant enough to last for a year. Our moat was wide and deep, and it was not easy for the zombies to cross. Even if they managed to come over, our city wall was sturdy enough, and we also had tens of thousands of fearless soldiers. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the sounds of bombing and gunfire came from the ground. The zombie tide had arrived. Everyone was silently praying that the safe zone could smoothly survive this disaster, and that all those fighting on the ground could stay alive. I also closed my eyes and prayed. When I opened my eyes, a colorful butterfly landed on my hand. Looking at it, I suddenly realized that I had actually changed this world. At this time in my previous life, I and many others had already been bitten to death, but now we were all still alive. And Lu Zheng, who should have let people to leave the safe zone, was now here, fighting side by side with his comrades. The apocalypse was changing the general environment, and I was changing the apocalypse. Although I was as weak as a butterfly, the wings I flapped had ultimately triggered this violent tornado-like storm. I listened to the sounds outside. The gunshots and cannon fire were extremely intense. Since the gunshots hadn't stopped, it meant that the power of humanity was still strong, and not suppressed by the zombies. Everyone was afraid to fall asleep, tightly gripping their weapons, ready to fight to the death at any moment. On the 3rd day, a huge noise came from the ground, and the earth trembled. It seemed that the wall had collapsed. I couldn't help but recall the tragic scene after the wall collapsed in my previous life. In less than half a day, the safe zone had fallen. Wherever the zombies went, there was no more life. As time passed minute by minute, except for the earth, shaking gunfire and cannon fire, no zombies reached here. This battle lasted until the dawn of the 4th day before it weakened, and then became deathly quiet. The shelter was also silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open, not knowing whether the zombies had defeated humanity or humanity had eliminated the zombies. My heart was pounding violently, and even Duo could feel it. Mommy, your heart is beating so fast, Duo said. My mother-in-law also held my hand. Lon, it's okay. No matter what, we're together. Even if it's the road to the underworld, we'll walk it together. I hugged them tightly. I don't know how long it had passed when the steel door of the shelter made a thick sound. The door was opened, and a team of exhausted combatants appeared in front of us. The crisis has been resolved. Everyone go home. The crowd became excited, packed their things and walked out. We also followed the crowd out of the shelter. At this moment, the sky was still dark. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and charred flesh. As the gentle breeze blew, the air gradually became clear. Son, do you know about the casualties? My son's name is Zhou Kai. Have you seen him? An old man grabbed a combatant and asked. The man replied, I don't know either, old man. You go home and wait for news. After hearing this, I quickly ran towards the direction of the protective wall. The tall protective wall stood firm, but I knew that defending this wall must have come at a price. That person couldn't not know about the casualties. He just didn't want to say it. And in the battle against the zombies, there were no injuries, only deaths. 27. I found Song Yuan by the wall. He was slumped on an ammunition box, covered in dust, with his clothes tattered and blood-stained. He looked as if he had fallen many times. When he saw me, he smiled. Sis, believe it or not, I moved more than 500 boxes of ammunition these days. I'm the kind of person who can't even run 1,500 meters. Yet I moved so much ammunition. Am I awesome? Tears streamed down my face. I peeled one of the coconut candies he gave me and fed it to him. Yes, you're the best. This person who had called me sister for 23 years, used up all his points to exchange for food for me that day, and then prepared to face death. He chewed on the candy. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine after lying down for a while. Go find brother-in-law. Where is Lu Zheng? Song Yuan pointed forward. The last time I saw him was in that direction. I looked up. A section of the city wall not far away had collapsed, and many people were lying on the ground. When I got closer, I saw that most of them were the corpses of zombies, but there were also many combatants. I was familiar with their clothes and equipment. They were from Lu Zheng's elite team. They were always in the most dangerous places, in both my previous life and this life. I walked forward slowly, not knowing whether in this life I would still meet him, and then part from him again. The wind blew past my ears. I stepped on the ruins, walking forward step by step, not knowing what awaited me. Suddenly, a hand grabbed me, and a hoarse voice sounded beside me. Don't go over there. That's a restricted area. I was stunned and slowly turned around. The sun had risen from the east, and the warm sunlight illuminated the earth inch by inch. Against the light, Lu Zheng stood in front of me, his eyes bloodshot, with a short stubble on his chin. He was still alive, covered in gunpowder smoke and dust. Did we win? I asked him. He nodded, resting his chin on my forehead. Yes, we won. That's good. I hugged him tightly. In my hazy tear-filled eyes, I saw the previous butterfly fly over and land on his epaulette. After a moment, it circled around me once and finally flew away with the wind. The storm caused by the butterfly had stopped. My despair, worry, and struggle in these 2 lifetimes finally ended at this moment. 28. This 3-day and 3-night war was later called the Battle of Longwan Defense. On the night when the defense battle ended, the virus expert group in Longwan announced that the antiviral vaccine had achieved initial success. As long as people were vaccinated, they would not be infected even if bitten by zombies. Only then did I realize that in my previous life, we had been just one step away from success. That year, other safe zones also successively encountered zombie tides. But because of the protection of the vaccine and the experience learned from Longwan, the safe zones all survived safely. Other countries were also besieged by zombie tides, and our country unreservedly shared its experience. On the 812th day of the apocalypse, the International Virus Expert Group developed a reagent to kill the zombie virus, and humanity sounded the bugle for a counterattack. On the 1040th day of the apocalypse, humanity finally achieved the ultimate victory. When the gate of the safe zone was finally opened, I, along with others, walked out of this place that had protected us for a full 2 years. Standing under the vast sky, we saw the lush growth of grass and trees, and the gorgeous blooming of flowers. The world was coming back to life. The wish I made when I stood on the city wall last year had now come true. Mommy, I want to go play over there with Xian and the others. Duo, who was now 8 years old and had many good friends, said. I nodded. Go ahead. Longwan, I'm going to training first. If you want to go back and rest, call me, and I'll come pick you up. My mother-in-law, who had joined the square dance team this year, and was now intensively training, vowing to win the first place in the competition, said. Song Yuan also didn't spend much time with us now. He had a girlfriend, and the young couple was as sweet as honey, and was already planning their wedding. And Lu Zheng was still very busy. I hadn't seen him for almost a month. As for me, I touched my bulging belly. I was already 5 months pregnant, and the little one was a bit naughty, kicking me from time to time. I found a place to sit and watch Duo and the others play. After a while Lu Zheng called. What are you doing? He asked. Accompanying Duo. What about you? Turn around. I was stunned for a moment and turned around. I saw him standing not far away in ordinary clothes. I didn't know when he had come back. He walked over and sat down beside me, carrying a bag of my favorite chestnuts and sugar. He peeled one for me. I took a bite. It was as sweet as it was before the apocalypse. I didn't ask him how long he could stay this time because at this moment, it was like Gu Cheng's poem. The grass is bearing its seeds. The wind is shaking its leaves. We are not saying anything, enjoying this leisurely and beautiful time. Daddy, you're back. Duo ran over and threw herself into his arms, acting spoiled. Mommy, Daddy, Xian said there's a river here, and there are many beautiful stones by the river. Can we go pick stones? Sure, let's go right now. Lu Zheng held Duo's hand with one hand and mine with the other. Along the way, there were many 4-member families like us, and laughter filled the flower-blooming riverbank. The past sadness had gone far away. Each of us was striving to move on, and actively create a new life.